around. So thank you for your patience with the slight late start. Also, just to note, as usual, this meeting is being recorded, and there will be a subsequent, there is live and then subsequent broadcast on the council's internet. Looking around, there are quite a few people that we might have expected to come that aren't here. So I'm just going to see if we have any specific apologies for absence during this.
We have apologies from Councillor Brabazon.
Yeah.
And apologies also from Chapter 4.
Okay, and then we'll go around and do some introductions in just a second. So in fact, we'll probably do that. Now. Keith, you're the only one online, I think. Everybody else is in the room. Just checking you can hear us okay.
Okay, I can hear you fine. That's cool. I can hear you fine. That's okay.
Thanks, Keith. Do you just want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my apologies. Keith Wilson, the Borough Commander for the London Fire Brigade in Haringey.
Thanks very much, Keith. Thank you for joining us online. And then should we just go to my left and then around the room?
Yeah, my name is Nazir Chowdhury. I'm Democratic Services and clerk to this meeting.
Very lovely. And on this table, should we just go circular from yourself?
My name is Sabrin Baby. I'm from Victim Support, one of the hub managers.
Hi, I'm Jessica, the anti-social behaviour caseworker at Victims. Hi, I'm Chantal Patania, consultant in public health at Haringey Council.
Hi everyone, my name is Emma Isnori. I'm the Commissioning Officer, Domestic Abuse Lead, and I sit in Housing Related Support at the Council.
So I am Abby Witchley, the Violence Against Women and Girls Programme Lead for Haringey Council, sat within public health.
Hi, I'm Jeff Wooding. I'm the manager for the Integrated Gangs Unit.
Sandy Broker, Internal Analysis for CHC in Haringey.
Good afternoon, Hubert Malcolm, Assistant Director for Environment.
Good afternoon, Joe Benmore. I'm the Strategic Lead for Community Safety.
Hi there, Tom Hassan, Police Inspector for Safe Neighbourhoods East of Haringey.
Afternoon, Tracy Lilly. I'm the Head of ASB and Enforcement for Haringey.
Thank you very much, everybody. So I've come to Naz first to ask if there is any urgent business before we wrap up the agenda.
No, actually.
Okay, thank you. And just asking any members of Cabinet if they have any information. No? Okay. So just a couple more formalities before we launch into the agenda for today proper. Minutes were circulated in advance from the last meeting on the 27th of June. Any points of accuracy from anyone around those or they want to comment on? No, okay, let's agree then as those minutes for the meeting of the 27th of June. And moving into today's session, I think everyone hopefully had an update of the format change, hence we're all in person today, which I must say feels nice but quite unusual because we haven't done this for a very, very long time. And in view of that, the decision was to go with more of a thematic sort of workshop type approach for the day, with the theme being around victim focus. And I just wanted to just outline, I think we've got a presentation to start with following Sandy, is that right? Coming in. So we'll move from your presentation into the workshop and we'll work through that as we go. But shall I hand over to you, Sandy?
Yeah, you absolutely. So I just wanted to kind of set the scene today. So as the chair said, we were expecting a lot more people, and workshops normally work better with a lot more people. So for those that are here today, thank you so much for your attendance. The idea, there's a couple of things. So some time ago, we decided that the Community Safety Partnership Board should be themed around particular priorities that are contained in the Community Safety Strategy, which is 2024 to 27. One of the priorities in the strategy is how we work with victims. And the purpose of today as a face-to-face meeting was to really generate some discussion amongst colleagues, amongst different services, around how we work with victims as a council, We have a duty to provide a positive victim experience, and it's wrong to think of victims as just victims of crime. There can be victims of adverse childhood experiences, for example, domestic abuse, for example, and exploitation and other victims. And the idea of today was to tease out from some of the services about how we work with victims and kind of what we're doing in that space and what kind of challenges and opportunities we face when working with victims in terms of how we refer them into services, how we commission services specifically with a victim's focus. And lastly, what we can do as a board collectively, all of the council together, to try to improve that experience. On each table, we're very facilitator heavy today, but we've got lots of facilitators. We've got facilitators, and on each table you'll see some flip charts. And what we're trying to do is capture your thoughts around how we work with victims of hate crime, for example, victims of gangs, exploitation and antisocial behaviour. We've got a massive issue with antisocial behaviour in Haringey. We do have a lot of antisocial behaviour victims. How the victim service generally works with victims, generally, and certainly how we work with hate crime and domestic abuse victims. But there's also colleagues from public health who work with victims of trauma, victims of adverse childhood experiences, etc. So really, it's just to get you guys talking, discussing, going through kind of some of the work that you're doing. Whilst we're doing that, we'll try and capture some bullet points. And the idea of those is to try and generate some kind of next steps, you know, especially in terms of where there are gaps or opportunities to improve that work. So again, thanks a lot for coming today. I really appreciate it. It is very different. We've been doing this on Teams for a long time, and it takes a bit of getting used to coming back to face-to-face meetings, but they will be face-to-face from now on, just to give you the heads up. So thank you everybody for coming today. So I'll hand over to Sandy just to set a bit of context around the data. Thank you.
Thank you. So with regards to victims, there's obviously some kind of subsets of themes that are part of today's discussion. And so just on the screen there, hopefully everybody can see the big screen just on that side. Just really set a bit of the context around some of those particular areas of victimisation that I'm talking about, just to really set the scene a little bit. Of course, some of this will be information that you're quite familiar with, depending on your particular area of work, and other parts might be less familiar. But nonetheless, just really to set the scene in terms of Harrogate, a borough with, you know, it's fair to say some reasonably significant challenges when it comes to crime and victimisation. So if we click over to the first slide here, which hopefully will appear, there we are. In terms of overall crime, what does overall crime look like? And this is based on reported crimes across the entire borough, really set the scene on what it looks like in Harrogate. So we've seen around about 28 to 30,000 crimes recorded in the borough. So last year it was close to 28,000, but it varies year on year. Generally, we see a fairly stable figure. Interestingly, that's a small 4% reduction as compared to the previous year. This puts us around about, just above, I should say, mid-table in London for our rates of crime. So overall, we see around about 100 crimes per 1,000 population. So if it was all spread equally in terms of victimisation, we might expect 1 in 10 of our residents per year to be a victim of crime. Now, we of course know there are repeat victimisations and so on and so forth, so it's not evenly spread, of course, but really just as a representative figure, that's perhaps something you can have in mind. In terms of overall crime, the most common types that are reported are things like theft, violence and vehicle offences. And of course, there are far more serious crimes as well that fall within those categories and also outside of those. Generally speaking, we tend to see more crimes and higher volumes of what we call lower harm crimes and fewer higher harm crimes. So they things like serious violent incidents where somebody receives an injury or sometimes a homicide, perhaps something of that nature. We tend to see fewer of those, but more things like theft, violence and cars being broken into, things like vehicle offences. In terms of where most crime occurs, we get no real surprise for those who are familiar with the borough. This also obviously correlates where we have more victims. Knoll Park, Northumberland Park and South Tottenham tend to be those key locations. And of course, within those locations, it's not just residents that may be victims of crime, it might also be people from outside the borough who are attending either to work or for education or to, for example, attend some of the commercial kind of locations like Woodford and High Road. That's what overall crime generally looks like. There's a map there on screen there, which is quite hard to see, unfortunately, but generally speaking, it shows that Harrogate is around about mid-table or just above for overall crime. Moving on to look at hate crime, and again, there's far more detail in hate crime that we couldn't get into, but just a very top-level context. We've seen close to 800 hate crimes reported in the past year. I think reported is quite an important term there because, of course, we know that lots of victims of hate crime, as with some other crime types, don't report when they are a victim of such an incident. Interestingly, that is a small 3% reduction as compared to the previous year. Generally speaking, we have seen a bit of an increase over the medium and long term. In particular, we're now around about 9th highest in terms of our overall reported hate crime rates in the borough. And as I'm sure many of you will be aware, there was a really significant spike in hate crime recorded and reported following the start of the Israel conflict in October 2023. And in particular, anti-Semitic and Islamophobic hate crimes have seen a large spike since that period. In more recent months, those have tapered off slightly, but nonetheless, they remain elevated as compared to historic baselines. The map on the screen there, again, it's quite hard to see, but the darker areas are always the higher volume hate crime reported, and those include wards such as Knoll Park, South Tottenham, Woodside, Harrogate, and also Bruce Castle. We want to look at antisocial behaviour. As already been mentioned, antisocial behaviour is obviously a key challenge for the borough. We see close to around 10,000 ASB incidents reported per year. That includes those reported to the police as well as to the council's own ASB service. So that accounts for around about 25 to up to 30 per day. So just to really give you a context in terms of kind of volumes that are being dealt with. So Harrogate has about the 12th highest volume of ASB in London. So again, there are 13 London boroughs, so we are in almost the kind of the top third with respect to that. Interestingly, our rate of ASB per thousand population is around 18% above the London average. We are higher than you might expect to be for a borough of our size. Most commonly within Harrogate, things like ground behaviour, neighbour disputes, and also noise use, they tend to be the highest and most common types of ASB. And there is a seasonality to the ASB. So as you'll notice from the charts in the middle of the screen there, the summer months tend to have higher volumes and slightly lower volumes recorded in the winter months. And very finally, we look at domestic abuse. And again, there's lots of information and data when we consider domestic abuse, but just really as a very top level context, we have actually seen, interestingly, a very small reduction in the recorded volume of domestic abuse, violence and injury offences in the past year, a 3% reduction within that. Of course, with domestic abuse as well as with hate crime and other similar crime types, there is a significant level of underreporting. So this may not necessarily be a reflection of the true picture. London as a whole has actually recorded a 6% rise in domestic abuse over the past year, and actually most London boroughs have seen an increase. And our rate of reported domestic abuse at 2.7 per thousand is actually slightly above London's rate as well. And you can see again from the charts at the bottom of the screen there, just the volumes reported per year for the whole of London, and Harrogate is just again above the mid-table for this measure. So again, this should really hopefully just a bit of context and really set the scene for the overall crime types that we're going to be speaking about today, domestic abuse, hate crime, and so on. So really set the scene in terms of some of the further discussion. But
thanks, Andy. Okay, so on the tables, we've set out some flip chart pages with some of the areas that we're going to be talking about today. So, for example, on that table, we've got victims of crime in general and victims of domestic abuse. And then on this table, we've got gangs, exploitation and antisocial behaviour, as well as victims of hate crime. My suggestion is kind of a big discussion for around 30 to 40 minutes, just really teasing out some of the insights, some of the challenges, some of the concerns. Try and focus on the three questions on there. And for the purposes of this workshop, we're going to have to adapt slightly. It may be that colleagues from, for example, public health are not aware of how the ASB. So it's just teasing out how each of those services works, how we work together as services, and what more we can do, what opportunities there are to increase or improve from working. So it's 2:30, just coming up to 2:30 now. So if we work till say just after 3, and I'll give us a shout. If you could just bullet point, just take any bullet points, any insights that you capture, so that we can capture as much of the feedback as possible. That would be great. And obviously, chairs, you're welcome to join in the table discussion. Yeah, should we do it that way?
No.
Yes.
Merge the tables.
Yeah.
We could do if that makes more sense. If there was a better way to do it. So yeah, can we just merge the two tables together if that's all right? And then or introduce these tables here. Use this one, and we can move back.
As long as people are surrounded by microphone.
Yeah. Okay, so everyone needs to speak up. Or unless we move, yeah, unless we,
We could just sandwich that.
Yeah, if we all move to that page,
yeah.
just sandwich us all together. The best way of doing it.
Oh, Jack, you get, okay.
Yeah.
Theme holders.
Yeah.
About 8.
Oh, yeah. If you want.
Yeah, happy.
How you work.
No, no, no.
Okay, hello everyone. So we've decided that we're going to congregate together in a big table. What we're going to do is ask the theme holders, do a bit of an introduction, then we can open it up, answer those questions there. So Heather's got the short straw so far. The closest. So we're going to start with victims of hate crime and those vulnerable to radicalisation. And Heather can do a quick intro, and then what we can do is then focus on those 3 questions. I don't know, 10 minutes, and then we can move along, and then each theme owner can do a bit of intro. Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna stand up. Sorry, haven't really prepared anything, so please excuse me if I fumble through this. So our theme is victims of hate crime, but then also those vulnerable to radicalisation. Because myself and our team within the council, who sit under Hubert's team, deal with hate crime issues, but then also the prevent strategy. So protecting and supporting vulnerable individuals and communities from the risks of radicalisation and extremism within the borough. So I guess it's sort of like a very brief overview of hate crime. Sandeep gave you the figures. I think we were around 782 potentially for a year period, which is about average, to be honest. I've just recently did a little bit of analysis of comparing hate crime figures in Haringey as opposed to those in our boroughs as well. And Hackney, our neighbouring boroughs, Hackney, Enfield, Islington, I think that was it. That's the only ones that I compared it to. And Hackney came up top, so they had the highest amount of hate crime. Then it was ourselves. Then it was Islington and Enfield as well, and then it was Enfield. However, we have one of the highest populations and the lowest rate per 1,000 population. So technically, when you look at it in that stance, that yes, we do have a higher rate of hate crime, but when we think about our rate per 1,000 population, it is lower, and I think it was lower than Enfield as well as Islington. Sorry, I would have brought the stats here today for you. So when we think about the most frequent type of hate crime that has been reported, race and religion always comes out on top. In terms of reporting, race and religion are reported and flagged together. So when somebody reports to the police, it's not differentiated. Homophobic hate crime usually comes out sort of second from the top, and then anti-Semitic and Islamophobic. And disability hate crime usually always comes out at the very bottom. And when we're talking about the very bottom, we're talking really, really low numbers. So like 12 reported in a yearly period, and I think it was 7 potentially last year. So we've done quite a bit of work this year with Disability Action Haringey. They presented during Hate Crime Awareness Week on a training session. Just to raise awareness of sort of disability hate crime, how it manifests, and then sort of victims' code of conduct, as well as, you know, really encouraging reporting. Encouraging reporting, so we don't see sort of our high figures as necessarily a bad thing, probably exactly the same as everybody around the table when you're thinking about exploitation, domestic abuse, because the more people report to us, the more that we're going to know about sort of the nature and makeup of hate crime in the borough, as well as how to support victims and who is out there and the types of sort of hate crimes that are manifesting. As Sandeep sort of alluded to, and probably my last point today is around the knock-on effect of sort of geopolitical and national, local events and how that has an impact upon our communities. So obviously October the 7th last year, where the conflict in the Middle East, the insurgents in Gaza has had a massive impact locally on our residents in Haringey. So particularly sort of our faith communities, so our Muslim residents, but then also our Jewish residents. And yes, we did see a massive increase in anti-Semitism in particular in the borough, but also Islamophobia. What we do tend to find with our Muslim residents is that there's a lack of trust in sort of reporting, because we've heard from time to time where people have reported things to the police that it hasn't been pursued, or it's been no further action, or not been logged as a hate crime. So again, we're currently working with police colleagues as well as the faith communities to see how we might be able to improve this or address this and look at different training sort of methods. And again, in Hate Crime Awareness Week, that was one of our objections and intentions, to raise awareness of the different nuances of the faiths in the borough. And it was really good to see how many police officers turned out on that day. So that was really good. Again, sort of knock-on effects of the Southport attack in August. Our communities are still very fearful of what might happen and the resurgence of different extremist groups. So we've had reports of National Front canvassing in the borough, as well as EDL, and we've seen physical graffiti in relation to those groups. And this really has sort of triggered particularly our Muslim communities, who are most sort of victimised by these groups in sort of recent months, that it might, you know, things that happened in the 70s and 80s might resurge and happen again in terms of the threat and the physical violence. Okay, thanks. Yeah, sorry. Really sorry.
Some of that wasn't prepared, didn't you? Well, okay, so we're really going to open it up now. Thank you for that, Heather. We have a bit on the spot there, so thank you for that. So in terms of around the table, let's start with the first question. What is your service doing in this space? So holler out, Joe can take some notes. So in this space, what are other service areas doing? So
From a board perspective, we collaborated and included questions in the the hate crime survey that went out, and worked really collaboratively to design the questions and try and gain new insights that we wouldn't have got from our existing data sets from the police. So that was really important.
It's more about intersectionality and how that plays out.
And other things, and you know, like stalking that we don't get lots of information about, or harassment, kind of lower levels.
Yeah. And one of our bits of work that we're picking up again soon is the Safe Haven, so that manifesto commitment around training up safe spaces. And we're going to include information on hate crime in that training as well, because somebody might go in there as well when they've just experienced hate crime. So yeah.
And then another key piece of information is the new government has just decided to include misogyny, extreme misogyny, incel as part of their new extremism review. So it might be that in future, when we sort of risk assess against vulnerabilities toward radicalisation and stuff, we can include. Yeah, so it might be that you guys can sit on the channel panel in future, or we can do some of that work.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
I guess connected to that, one of the services that we commission that works in schools have developed a program for young men and boys. So kind of around the healthy, like relationships and kind of sex ed. It's like a space for young men and boys to kind of talk about emotions and like relationships and how to treat, you know, behaviors and stuff. And that's not something that we've kind of seen before. So it's kind of, yeah, so they've done work with HLP, and they're doing work at Harris Academy, and they worked at Alexandra Park School as well.
And just the Bourg Strategic Board as well. Joe and Heather came and gave an update on the hate crime strategy and where we're at and next steps. So that was
anyone else? Please, colleagues, some support, anything from your?
So in Victorsburg, we do provide training around hate crime. We're doing our own internal training. And we also have another department that does terrorist areas. If anything extreme is going on in any areas, we have another specialist department that takes over and provides support.
How does that work? How do you get a referral?
All our referrals will come through either self-referrals, webinar referrals. We have a 24-hour service set up. So our support line works 24 hours. So we get all sorts of referrals coming. And people do chat lines as well. So our referrals come in all different angles, from the police, other agency, chat line, support line.
Should we move on any more on that? If not, should we move on to what are the challenges and opportunities? That's all.
One for me would be the increase in incel activity and the kind of priority need to address misogyny in people, and I don't know, maybe an ask for the board as well, this one, how far advanced we are in terms of how we work with schools, colleagues and our schools in Haringey, and what the mood music is like, for want of a better word. Are they willing to support that work? Do they commission any work? Is there anything we could jointly commission? Because I think if we can, I think I saw a report actually not long ago that if you can impact young boys at an earlier stage, you can reduce domestic abuse and the long-term issues of hate crime and all of those issues, you know, kind of more positively. So again, an ask for the board would be, what are schools doing around the hate crime and domestic abuse agenda around incel
Just
ideology?
sort of our team's perspective, we think that our schools have got a good handle on incel. We do generally get quite a few concerns come through to the team about, you know, I guess concerns around things like Andrew Tate, like hustlers, diversity, things like that. So we offer incel training to schools, and I know we also offer it to the Haringey Children's Safeguarding Partnership, and that was done in conjunction with the board team. So that's things that are sort of in motion already, I guess.
Heather, is it?
Yes.
A bit more about the training. How do we find out like when it's available, when people can register?
Yeah, so part of this, so the Haringey Children's Safeguarding Board partnership, sorry. That's all done online. So Avril Lindsay in the team sends out emails. I don't know if it's like on a monthly basis to tell people what the trainings are. The next incel one is the 15th of January. So you can go on the Haringey Children's Safeguarding Partnership website, and then you can just sign up to any ones that you want there.
So maybe that's the ask. Maybe that's the ask on the board, just cascade that type of.
Yeah, I don't know if it was recorded. Probably not.
If I could have the link to watch it, because I couldn't make that training session. But I don't know whether it was.
They are recorded.
Which is a shame, because if there was something that we could access.
Yeah.
Even online.
Do you know what? We've got a new Prevent Education officer joining the team in December, and I know she's got her background is in women, and she does workshops already in schools and things in incel and misogyny and stuff. So we could maybe add it to her work plan to record a session to disseminate it more widely.
I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
Or to ensure training is cascaded appropriately amongst the different teams. One of the challenges I think as well is the way services or the pathways for interventions. So from schools, I think as well. So I think there's always been this, this dichotomy between the prevent agenda and hate crime and how we engage around that space. And I don't know kind of what work is going on around that, and that I think then increases the trust in reporting and stuff like that.
I think there's a challenge in schools at the moment from our perspective, and I know we've spoke to Councillor Brabazon about this before, is that hate crimes are not, I don't think they're necessarily recorded like radicalisation or preventers. And we do get concerns from schools that talk about hate crime, but they don't meet the threshold for prevent intervention. So it's almost like what's missing in that space where they don't meet the threshold, but there still is obviously somebody who's very vulnerable.
Abigail, thank you. I think Abigail made something about preventative. I don't think, how preventative are, you've got a young people risk strategy that focuses on the public health approach. How preventative are we in this space about how can we keep our young people out of committing hate crimes? I know there's academic research around that. Probably is.
So there've been some recent reports. So, for example, Women's Aid did a report. I've got no concept of time. Earlier this year, around influencers and attitudes, and it looked at how exposure to misogynistic content online can translate into a tolerance of harmful behaviours in relationships. So we do have somewhat of an evidence base in terms of like how we're being preventative. So we've got things that we commission already that look at kind of like gender and healthy relationships, but I do think there could be more specifically stuff around men and boys in particular, like Anais was saying. But I think it's about having the resource for that to be an option.
But one thing that the kind of the the program that works with schools, they're getting feedback they're getting from teachers is that the kind of comments that they're hearing from particularly young boys is happening a lot earlier. So things
Yeah.
that they would be tackling in like year 9 or, you know, in secondary school, they're now having to address it in a primary school setting, which obviously like the way you're going to respond to that is going to be very different. But yeah, teachers just don't feel equipped to be able to respond to kind of the comments that they're hearing from like year.
Training for teachers.
Yeah.
And I think something important to note as well is that when we're seeing these attitudes and behaviours, like the Vorg workforce is overwhelmingly women, but people who hold misogynistic attitudes don't, I mean, sweeping generalisation, but they're just not going to listen to women in the same way. So we do need interventions for boys and young men that are led by men.
So that is our time up for that conversation, trying to keep us on point. So thank you very much. Any last comments? If not, I'm going to move over to victim. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Bit of an intro. We've got 10 minutes in its entirety. It's a bit intro, and then we can open up looking at those 3 questions. I think questions 2 and 3 are kind of weaved in together anyway. So
Cool.
the floor's yours.
So I don't know really what's relevant to bring in to introduce. So we've obviously got a Vorg team within Haringey Council that crosses a couple of directorates. So we're in public health and housing related support. We commission a range of specialist services in Haringey, and we're very lucky that we've got really specialist services. So we've got IDVA provision, like generalist, but we've also got IDVA provision for ethnically minoritized women, and we've got an IDVA for LGBT plus communities. And we've also got refuge. So again, generalist refuge and refuge for those who are ethnically minoritized. We've got a young person, IDVA, a young women and girls IDVA. What do you think?
No, I was going to say we've got like a Vorg strategy, a 10-year strategy, recognizing that, you know, Vorg is a massive issue and really, really complex. We have a Vorg strategic board, which meets quarterly and has partners from here and, you know, lots of different partners from different agencies. We have a Vorg operational forum that also meets quarterly. In between, we meet with different partners separately. We have conversations with the police to see what they're doing.
We're undertaking DAHA accreditation, which is Domestic Abuse Housing Alliance. It is a huge piece of work, but really worth it because it means that we are a safe local authority for people experiencing domestic abuse.
We do campaigns throughout the year to try and raise awareness of our services and the issues. So for International Women's Day, we'll do events, 16 days of activism.
Doing events. We did a beer mat campaign this summer in pubs with the Euros, men's Euros, for clarity.
We're also looking to, we know that training is an issue and people want to know more about different types of Vorg and, you know, more about detailed things about like coercive control. So we're trying to, we will be commissioning a training program, some kind of broad training for that lots of people can come to, and some more specialist for social workers or different organizations that might need more, you know, detailed information. So we're in the process of thinking about that as well.
And then we've also got a number of 7 Vorg commitments in the Haringey Labour Manifesto. So there we've got commitments around like safer public spaces for girls and women, safe havens where people can go if something happens at any time of day, but also at night, training for the entire workforce. We're working on an e-learning at the moment. There are a holistic pathway of support. There are quite a few, but yeah, there are lots of different elements of work going on with
And a DA policy for council staff as well, which will be launched as part of
16 days. And we've got a new domestic abuse policy for residents. And then obviously we also do domestic homicide reviews.
Thank you very much. Should we open up about what else is happening in this space? Should I go to our police colleagues?
Okay. Domestic abuse is treated as a #1 sort of priority amongst the police. Every crime, any domestic incident is reported, and it goes to our public protection team who will investigate it. But it also, any sort of outstanding named suspects are a priority for us. So see any report with a named suspect on high on the agenda, and our response teams and our offender managements and public protection are out trying to bring those people in and interview them as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I was just going to say, one of the things that, because we commission a whole host of organisations to support victims and victim survivors. We've got like local ones and access to regional services as well. And we do try and promote them as widely as possible. And I was just wondering how well it's kind of getting through to police on the front line. You know, we meet with the strategic leads and we share the services that we have, but I was just wondering how well it's filtering down so that,
What the referral, the,
you know, how easy it is for victims that need support to actually get signposted to our IDVA services.
so that's part of the initial interaction with victims is that we refer them to those services, and we also leave them contacts and details for those services. That's part of the tech checklist. We call it a 124D, but
So it always happens.
it'll go in every year, and we have to sign off that we've done that, and we get the victim to sign generally.
Because I want to know, Tom, exactly what those services are
They
specific.
do get specific training in domestic, and it happens every year.
But do they know on the commission services that you're referring
I don't
to?
think they know this. I don't think they know inside out what services are offered. I think they offer the services, but they don't truly know what those services do. And maybe that's something that's quite
Would it
important.
be helpful for them to know?
I think it would be so that they can, because a lot of the time,
With these colleagues, like kind of our Borg strategic board, we normally have recently we've been having a police update at each board.
So is that, who's your link in there? Is that Chris Anderson or Stuart Smiley?
Both, yeah. We meet with both.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think for officers on the front line, I don't think they actually know what they're referring them to. They'll just give them a list and say,
Yeah.
these are some referral things. You can call them and speak.
Help with this,
Yeah.
if it needs
Yeah.
modifying.
Have you got publicity sort of material like leaflets, for
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
or QR codes and
Yeah.
things like that? Because the reason why I'd sort of just check that, I understand that, like you say, there's a
Yeah.
standard sort of checklist that officers ask the question. But commission services are sort of changing and improving and evolving, and they're different in different areas, aren't they? So although the question might be standard, I think the actual referral, they might not have an awareness of exactly what services might apply, and you know there might be particular, you know, particular women or you know victim survivors of particular type of abuse that have different commission services, and they fall into sort of catchment, I suppose, for
I think
we need to properly promote that.
I think on the front line, we definitely do. I know they get the follow up, but generally that might be too late sometimes. Follow up,
Yeah.
I think there and then in the heat at the moment, it's the best time to get a statement, to talk to people and refer them to them. Whereas if they've had time to think and a bit longer, sometimes they might be more reluctant to think, oh, it's a one-off. I went.
Your numbers, I mean, looking at the police data are really, really high and probably more than actually attending our services. So it's really important that we're not like, you know, we really need to get as many women getting the appropriate support.
I know previously I've attended the Safe Neighbourhoods training to talk about the role of the local authority in partnership. I don't know if you've got something similar for Safe Neighbourhoods or your frontline officers, or just something, you know, we've got our talk sessions, maybe something we could talk about.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about, so recently we've had a process where we've had sort of sessions for all our, like away days for all our sergeants and inspectors, so supervisors across the BCU. And we had an input from Solace at the time. And the amount of people who said, oh, you know, how do we refer and can I have your exact, you know, your precise details and you've got any leaflets and all the rest of it, because they thought the team should know more about it than they do, instead of just saying, oh, well, I'll refer you into, you know, or the CSU, as the case, community safety unit, other people who refer it. I think it should be at that first point, and that's really quite important.
So is that something we can help out training or?
It is, but I'm just wondering what forum that would go through, because you've got, so the board, what was it that Stuart and Chris attend for
Or
you?
strategic,
Or
yes,
strategic board.
Chris attends the operational forum as well.
Yeah, because I think that operational forum might be the place for making sure across our, I mean, obviously the secondary, so you've got primary investigation, which is officers who are attending from emergency response invariably. They need to be in the detail on that and know exactly what's available from Haringey. And that's really easy to do, is our emergency response teams, you know, work out, you know, the Quicksilver base, and they're all in one place, and we can get them up to speed fairly quickly. And then we've got our community safety team, which pick up all domestic abuse investigations, which are the second. So they can then be the second stage. And I think it's really important that they're targeted as well to know specifically. And the other thing is to know
be well aware of this, is we have a really big high turnover of officers through the CSU because
Yeah.
it's an often very much a sort of high volume but fast paced training ground for them, and then they move into sort of other areas. So I think with that in mind, it needs to be refreshed quite regularly.
Would it be something we'd be able to get in our training days or something for response teams?
We could, but I'm also thinking about, you know, simple opportunities for emergency response, perhaps in handover, during handover time, that we could actually have a really focused session on, you know, domestic abuse. This is exactly what is the offer for Harringay, and these are the different criteria, and this is how you refer in, and any sort of promotion material, presumably. How do you do that with, to promote those services? Is it through QR codes?
We've got an online directory with like, you can download all the posters, flyers, referral forms, and it's kind of listed. So services, or kind of like buying for services that minoritized women or LGBT services. And then we've got a list of like refuge for refuge accommodation. And we've got a list for like mental health services. So kind of like all listed, you can just like download the form and then refer a form. But we do recognize that one of the challenges is there are so many services.
Yeah.
And like you have to know about them to be able to refer into them. And can we simplify that? So having like a singular referral form for all the provision that anyone can pick up, even with like limited training or understanding, would be able to kind of at least know, like have an idea of where to direct.
So this website doesn't give that. It just lists all the different.
Yeah, so you'd have to go in, and each one currently has
A
its
different
own
criteria
referral
or
form.
whatever. Yeah.
But so with our kind of new services, which we're currently kind of like recommissioning, we're working on having a singular referral form that could be used across for everyone.
Yeah,
Which is a work in progress.
work in progress.
But in progress.
In progress. We also deliver a briefing session called Introduction to Haringey's Morgan DA Services. That's posted on My Learning, but we actually don't have any booked in at the moment, but it's externally available. So we could even promote that across services into frontline officers. Potentially it's like an hour and a half online, which would talk through all the different services that we've got. And they're not going to remember the details of each and every one, but they'll be able to say with confidence, there's a range of services available and So
But I think
we
that's
can promote that.
definitely something that we could oversee here, but the operational group could probably pick up through Chris. He doesn't lead the CSU teams.
Yeah.
Or the emergency response teams, but he'll be well linked into those who do. So I think that'd be useful. Could I just ask a question around IDVA provision? How closely linked is the IDVA to the frontline or secondary investigators?
I mean, I was about to say, like, the other thing is like having them co-locate with police.
Yeah.
Like solve most of these problems.
So I've been thinking about that for a little while, and actually, I understood was a bit of a work in progress to try and get the co-location, but I'm not quite sure what the blocker is to that.
Well, I
Do we
think
know?
it's the kind of the time it takes to get the security clearance, and like you said, it's turnover of staff. You know, like it's just
Your turnover
you've
of
got- they've
IDVAs,
got
yeah.
high turnover of staff within IDVAs, as well.
Right.
So just to say, Chair, a couple of years ago, we were co-located, so we had the IDVA, we had probation,
Yeah.
we had substance misuse, all co-located at the police station.
Yeah. This was
Because
before
of the
COVID, wasn't
pandemic,
it?
yeah.
Oh, good.
So
Was that Wood Green?
yeah, it's up
Yeah.
on green on the second floor. So it's been done. We had probation there, we had the IDVA service.
Do we have information as to whether that works better, that we can
Well-
visibly say, you know what I mean? Like, it's.
The literature says it does.
Yeah.
It does, practically. I think it's just the practicalities that are, there's a long way to get security clearance, that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
apart from that, it works really well, just being really close to officers.
And I think the, you know, for our secondary investigators to have that relationship with them where they're, you know, connected in a bit like we are today, actually, so that differently to how we would be online or over the phone, it can be really helpful, particularly where you've got victims at risk of withdrawing from investigations, and then immediately you can ask the IDVA to help. So is it at the moment then that we've got the vetting needs to go through then? Are we actively sort of doing the vetting so that we, with a view to co-locating again, or what?
So I don't think that's in progress at the moment. I just feel like that's been, and because there were like the odd day of co-location for 16 days last year, wasn't there? But
Yeah, it's there.
they're never left unattended.
Yeah.
Mm.
So for 16 days, there's like they're co-locating, but for the rest.
don't think it's in progress. Nothing being worked on.
Think of that.
That's
So I wonder-
everyone to practically look at
I
again.
think that could be good.
Yeah, definitely. And from the police point of view, there's no barrier to that whatsoever. We would welcome it at Wood Green. And how many of us are we talking about, just in terms of space, so I can get my head around it?
Or we could do a rota, because we've got 4 IFA services.
Yeah.
And each of them have between 1 and 3 IFAs.
Well, should we set up a task and finish subset of this? Then what we can do then is discuss how to make it happen. If we both agree that it should happen, then how, you know, what do we need to do? What are the next steps? Let's make it happen. So that I think that could be the clear ask of the board to support that. I think I'm around the tables nodding. So
Yeah, and it also particularly, I'm conscious that a lot of things, so we used to have that before COVID and then it kind of dropped off, but there's no reason not to sort of bring it back
Bring it
in
back.
now.
Absolutely.
And it might be that it's just got forgotten over time, but that's definitely important, yeah.
so who's going to lead on that item?
We can.
So you can even let, but there's obviously
Yeah,
no
we'll
support around that. So
Said we're not as well, sorry.
in terms of doing and who's going to lead that, and then we can report back to the board at another time. Yeah. Anything from you on this?
Could I just bring one more? I know I've spoken a lot on this one, but we talked about safer public spaces as one of the Labour manifesto commitments, didn't we? We regularly have, as part of our tasking and coordination group, which TTCG, which some of you might be familiar with, where we look at resourcing and tasking into violence against women and girls, amongst other things. We look at stuff from, like, for example, safer spaces, and we see that that gets very, very low returns. And so we're not confident in any way in reacting to the information in that, because it's a very small, it might be the right steer, but it's a very small sample, isn't it, of where women in this case feel unsafe. I'm just wondering what we can do. I understand it's not particularly user friendly. It's a government app, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I understand it's not particularly user friendly, but just with, which might be a barrier to people putting energy in there. But I was just thinking, bearing in mind that's also a local authority commitment, how we go about getting information from women locally to understand exactly where they don't feel safe.
Yeah, in an ongoing way, it would just be that, wouldn't it? Because I know we've had like
In theory, yeah.
yeah, in theory, we've had like women's safety at night surveys and things over the years, but nothing kind of in an ongoing way. I think in Walthamstow they've got a different app that's actually used a bit more, so I can get in touch with my contact there and find out.
I think a while ago we were really kind of promoting the Safe app. And I think we've just not done that for a while. So
Do that again.
maybe we try.
Encourage.
But I think the returns really, I don't know if you know
Is it
about that, Tom, but the returns are so low, so low. I mean, we literally had 3 or 4 responses in the space of a month.
Yeah. Whereas like when we did engagement with young people, they were saying all these different spaces where they didn't feel safe, that they'd love the opportunity to report that.
Yeah, and where does that go, that information? Because we don't get it. And if it's with you, then how do you give that to us?
But MPS were at that too, so they
Yeah.
but in an ongoing way. How's that happening?
Yeah.
Who's out there from the MPS, do you know?
Couldn't tell you their names. I could tell you if I saw their faces. But we can try and find out. I'm sure it'll be in an email somewhere.
Yeah, well, I just wondered who got that information, because it'd be quite useful.
So it was part of we were doing work with social care, Haringey Sixth Form College and Highgate School around consultation for like a young person's version of the VOG action plan.
Because that should come through the PPSG meeting, shouldn't it, monthly target meeting for the borough?
The tasking one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The monthly Haringey Borough one.
Yeah.
That should come in there for. So we now have so sitting outside of, there's BCU tasking, so Haringey and Enfield is combined BCU and how we task resources into risks across those 2 boroughs. But there's also the Harrogate focused and then also Enfield focused, but borough-based tasking that is more of a sort of problem-solving multi-agency partnership group meeting that sits monthly. And some of it might be about, actual, resourcing, police resourcing required, because yes, we've got violence against women and girls problem in that particular location, but some of it might be, designing out lighting, the rest of it. Which is where the whole problem solving approach comes in.
There is a working group in Haringey, safer parks or something. that
Oh,
was
yeah.
put on. So they're constantly looking at green spaces and parks and how they can be made more welcoming, and how sports and activities can be introduced into places that aren't being used that well. And I think they've had some promising things happen as a
There's
result.
a walk and talk tomorrow, which I'm going, actually, so.
Just, no, and that's my question. How joined up are all these different
Yeah,
boards,
this is
the
the issue, I think.
PPSG, and
I think we try and the only way we're finding out about things is by attending as many of these things.
Yeah,
So
it's
like
possible.
Abby and Meg will sit on I'm on the email list, so I might not attend the meeting, but I'll read through what's happened. But it's quite time consuming, right? To try and keep on top of all these. And partly we are doing it because it's part of the Labour manifesto, so we have to. But it's a lot of different groups and lots of threads, and it's.
Does that need mapping out then in terms of what the governance is? Sorry.
So who's leading that walk and talk tomorrow?
Parks.
So it's probably worthwhile if you get that, because I didn't know about it.
Yeah,
I was like, okay, so maybe
Yeah.
part of that is again that's cascading that information, so all on the same page. Sorry, Caroline.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, have we mapped out all those different forums around governance and who oversees what and what gets fed into what? Because
I don't think we have.
that, some of the stuff we've already discussed loads of meetings that where the information you get from that would be really useful to us as more activity on a borough based sort of problem solving and tasking point of view. But I'm not sure, Tom, if we get that coming through.
No.
It'd be amazing to know where young people, for example, I know it might have happened at discussion, but I
Yeah.
don't know what the output of that was. It'd be amazing to know where young people, young women don't feel safe. Parks or otherwise.
It's just buses.
Yeah, it was buses. Buses, what routes then, all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. We
Yeah,
need to, what can we do with TfL, for example, with safe
Yeah.
transport network? There's loads of opportunity, but I'm just not sure it gets fed into the right.
But yeah, that's sort of came into PSG, that sort of thing, something. That's all sit to.
Yeah, so
No, I was just going to say the group that you talked about. So the Parks team have created a Safer Women's Network, and I think it's a group of 10 women. I can't remember the ages, but I think it's 20, probably in the teens, 20s. And this is what I was involved with tomorrow. They're meeting on a monthly basis in each of the different parks in the borough to talk about what makes them through. So maybe use that fund to feed into this, but then also for the police as well. I'm not sure if the police are connected to that fund.
Let's find out that another action.
The other thing as well, just to end on this piece, I suppose, is that the Children's Services developed an app and stop and search for young people. So there's nothing to stop us looking into the possibility of developing a local Haringey app for the streets that where you could promote it through Haringey people, and it could be for young people, it could be for all. Equally. The only issue with that is how do you resource it? How do you collect the data? Who collects it? So it's a bit more complicated than that, but there's nothing to stop us looking at doing something.
This is also, there's a similar app for missing, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, any more on that?
super quick from me, sorry. Just that, so where I worked in Oxford before, and in Oxford LPA, their TTCG, they had like a Borg specific TTCG, which actually was really cool because it looked at like different strands of VORG. So sometimes it just ends up being DA or SV, but they would look at stalking, and they also kind of like monitored project vigilance stuff as well. So I know it's probably not an option, but I just wanted to say it out.
Yeah, and it's good to raise it. So we don't have a specific. So the risk with having a VORG specific tasking meeting in isolation to other crime types is that you're not seeing the full picture when you task resources, because it's going to fragment stuff. Just to reassure you, and I know you don't come to TTC, but, and I don't know from a point of view of local authorities who's involved in having a specific one, but certainly at BCU tasking, we look at all the various sort of crime risks and issues, including bulk. And it's probably no surprise to know that that overlaps with a lot of other crime hotspots that we've got for the borough anyway. In terms of that, although I appreciate taskings will be different, and vigilant is something we're specific focus on. We do have a separate board, strategic board, which is not tasking meeting, but does look at a range of sort of tactics and options and data and performance and all sorts of other things, which could potentially then feed into an action or decision of tasking.
Is Keith still with us? No?
No, it's like that.
Okay. I was gonna say, what does the fire brigade have to contribute?
So the fire hubs actually are on our list to become trained safe havens. They volunteered to be perfect.
Yeah, that's right. So,
Yeah.
Okay, so should we,
I actually wrote that down. Could we have a conversation after around the safe havens?
Yeah, cool.
so I think we've got something as well. Okay, I think there's a few services that could probably have a conversation together. Okay, should we move on? Should we go to our victims of crime, and then you can maybe do a bit of an intro, and then we can open it up for wider discusussion?
I mean, I want to give you too much information because victim support at the moment is going through a structure change. Those we've been delivering. So our service for one is going to change from the beginning of next year. I'm not sure if anyone's aware, we CYP, Children and Young CYP team used to be part of victim support. On the 1st of November, they're no longer part of victim support. They've gone to Catch 22. They've taken over. But we still have domestics and young people's team works together. So that's a separate project. So I can't talk about the service we're going to be delivering, but I'll just give you an overall what we tend to do. We get all sorts of referrals coming through. We deal with all sorts of crimes. Domestic team, we do have domestic team under service, domestic service senior managers, but they are a separate project to us. Under our multi-crime, we were doing some domestic, but that's coming off our list a bit. So we'll be doing all general crimes and other project work. And the service that we are providing is anybody coming to our service from all sorts, from 24-hour services, live chat. They go to our inbound support line 24/7, and they send the referrals over to us. Every day we get a huge amount of cases coming through, either from the police direct referrals and from other agencies. We have a referral mechanism that processes everything. We pick up all the referrals throughout the day. Our main purpose is to give the cases to caseworkers, and it's making sure when they'll contact the service unit straight away, making sure that they're about the safety, making support plans and safety. So the aim is this: make sure that the safety is covered, and then networking with other agencies. And other cases we get could be, for example, fraud cases coming through where somebody's been, it might be cyber fraud, so they're straight away contacting the police. So they contacted the police to get updates, or they're contacting the banks to get further updates. So we're actually engaging with a lot of other services. So we support people immediately when the cases are coming in. So we get all sorts of crimes coming in. So the areas, I think our areas for us, or our challenges is when we're engaging with other agencies, our service users are waiting to get an update, and we're not always getting updates. So I think that's where sometimes the delay is, and it could be because somebody there's no arrest made, and just getting updates from the police services, and there's always a delay of information coming through. And the other areas is usually under housing, because all the crimes we're getting, one of the areas is a large area, because our caseworkers are providing ongoing emotional support. That's our main part. But anyone might be providing ongoing emotional support, but the other element of it, where if somebody's not happy because something's happening around their home area, they always want to move. So that's another area we're always trying to look at all other areas. And it's hard to get them moving in the same area if they've got children, they can't move outside. So the housing area becomes a larger area that we're holding cases, and there's not much we can do. People think that we can rehouse them, but we can't. So all we're trying to do is liaise with other organisations and try and get updates from the local authority. Sometimes sometimes it could be housing associations, or sometimes it could be the local authority. So I think our challenge is engaging with and not getting an update and not knowing who the housing officers are. So I think that's our main of our challenge
So is that one of your asks to share information more with our housing colleagues on who the probably tenancy management are?
I think it's trying to share information with other agencies, so we do work with the local authorities. But I think our challenge is that we're not always getting replies back from the local authorities.
Is that across all local authorities, does Haringey or?
It's especially across the board, but I could.
My personal experience with Haringey, because I do the anti-social behaviour for Haringey, just specifically under victim support, it's very good and get very good responses of Haringey. So there's nothing sort of there, but I think it's when it's like, for example, a housing association, that can be quite challenging. Like sanctuary and things like that, it's really difficult to get responses. And also where I'm advocating for a victim, if I've sent loads of emails, I've called, I've done everything I can, then going back to a victim and saying, I'm really sorry, I've not got a response from them, that can be really challenging. But I think Haringey is pretty good at responding. My experience with like housing officers and things it's been really positive, and the ASB team under Haringey, so nothing to sort of report there. But yeah, I just think for victims, it's getting the response back from services can be really, really challenging. And also, you know, you've got to abide by data protection as well with the alleged perpetrators. So I've got quite a few cases where I'm like, oh, things are going on in the background, but we can't tell you what's going on. And obviously that can be really challenging for victims as well. So I think having reassurance from the different agencies or professionals involved personally with a victim is really, really important. Not just coming from myself as an advocate, but actual interaction between services as well.
I'm going to hold as something, what a better word of the various housing associations, talk about how can it's building on top of the hotspot mapping we've done regarding criminality on a housing estate. So maybe what we can do is extend that invite to you, and that could be part of your ask to the housing associations to help solve these problems. This is what you can do for us.
Yeah.
When that date is, but I'm happy to extend that out. What we might do is have stalls around so the housing association can know who to go to. Maybe you can have a stall and then maybe have that open that conversation up. So I'm happy to take that action away from me. Okay, so in terms of what your service doing, you open it up. I think kind of linked in a bit already, haven't we? But is there anything else?
The other part our service does is a lot to do with making sure we're giving out fitness charters, we cover to everyone. We're also doing the court visits as part of the service. If anybody has to go pre-trial visits to court, that's part of our large funding that we cover, and that's for all London areas, including Hackney.
Did you get the funding?
From OPAC.
The one, I guess, challenge to is the kind of the interim domestic abuse service that victim support are doing, like the funding from MOPAC. There's been a pause on the recommissioning, and so there's an interim service which is in place until September 25, which has meant that it's massively reduced the number of referrals that the victim support side working with victims of domestic abuse can take. So they're no longer taking any referrals from MARAC. They're only accepting self-referrals and referrals through ADT. So in other London boroughs, they're also only taking referrals from co-locating IDVAs that are already in hospitals, and they're prioritising high-risk cases, which means that there are some boroughs where this is a problem because they only kind of commission high-risk IDVAs. And so they're kind of any standard to medium risk. There is a gap now that victim support cannot kind of take on those cases. But the other thing that we're seeing in we are going to see in Haringey is that victim support, as in like support for kind of male victims of domestic abuse. We don't have any service now that does that. We have Gallup, which works for kind of gay, bisexual, trans men, but we don't have a kind of a commissioned or a service that can work with men. We're talking to Hearthstone, but again, it's down to who do work with all genders, but that's an ongoing conversation about capacity. But it is something that has been flagged at a couple of different meetings now about, well, where can we refer men to?
Is that a commissioning issue, or is it because there isn't any accredited programs?
It's a commissioning issue. Because we wouldn't commission a kind of on a borough level. It would make sense to commission on a pan-London level.
Yeah, of course.
Or to do some joint commissioning.
Yeah, and the problem is that like if we go out to tender for kind of like all gender services, there are lots of specialist organisations that just won't work with all genders. So
Yeah.
So that's a gap.
Organisation that works with men and boys.
There are some, well, a couple, but
And
I don't even think they're pan-London. I think they're national. and they don't necessarily have like IDVA support available always. Sometimes it's just there's a helpline that you can call if you're a male victim, rather than kind of like equity of support across genders, if that makes sense. But yeah, so right now we've got a risk that
I'm surprised there's no referrals now being taken from Marek, bearing in mind that they're probably some of the most high risk perpetrators.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
because they're getting referrals from ADT straight from the police or self-referrals, but they're not, so any cases that they've taken on that go to Marek, they'll continue that support, but they won't take any referrals that have been heard at Marek that aren't already, if they're not already supporting them, so they will go to one of our commission services.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So it's not an issue right now because, but it is definitely an issue that kind of, there's concern across other London boroughs. We've had conversations about like, what are we going to do? There's a potential risk of like, we're going to have a lot more kind of standard to meet victim survivors at standard to medium risk who aren't going to get that early intervention, that early support. So then it's going to escalate to higher risk. That's down to funding, right? And that's a challenge.
So so let me just get, so basically, so if you've got if you pick somebody up from Marek, they're not already being worked with, but they're quite clearly the highest risk, where would that go?
They will go to one of our other commissioned IDVA services. It just won't, victim support won't be able to take on any
Right,
new
okay.
cases. So it would go to one of our other commissioned
So
services,
they would go to somebody, just not.
unless it's a straight man, and then
Yeah.
we don't have a commission service that can support that.
Right,
And the
okay.
follow-up is, are they looking to recommission services from 25? Because it could be something we as a board could lobby MOPAC about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fact that we're worried about
Yeah.
the fact that commissions, kind of been suspended. And I guess the other bit for me was around perpetrator. I know it's probably not your world, but perpetrator commission programs as well. I think there's a dearth of those in London nationally, actually. And I think with the increase in same-sex relationships, I think down the line we're going to start to see kind of more same-sex relationships, come involved in domestic abuse behaviour.
the rates of abuse in same-sex relationships are equivalent to the rates in heterosexual relationships. Yeah. But again, we have Gallup. Absolutely.
Woefully underreported.
Yeah.
Oh, even more, because there's even more mistrust of the police.
Yeah.
And of, kind of the shame and stigma around not being, especially if it's two women or two, like it's
Or
not
trans women.
serious, or trans women. Yeah, so it's worse.
Yeah.
So, Brand, anything more for you? Is there any particular ask of the board? Is there anything that we're not doing as a council that you want support with in terms of victim support interventions? Put on the spot.
Potential for us to do some lobbying. We spoke about housing associations,
Yeah.
more awareness about housing associations, signposting where you can go to. But is there anything that?
Because it's another thing, because somebody mentioned, because I know the other thing in victim support, when we try and complete any forms, each borough has a different form, so that could be united. That's another thing, that's another challenge amongst our staff members. Because we're supporting everyone around, because it might be based in North London, but we could be supporting what people could be moving around. So one of the challenges we always have when we try to complete any referral forms for local authorities, it's got different type of forms. And also with safeguarding, because when we start doing safeguarding forms, each local authority has a different safeguarding form.
I don't think it's just.
So if there's any way that could be just done as one. then we give it-
Yeah.
Is there a Pan London forum where those kind of discussions take place? Under heads of safety?
So we could bring that to London Heads of Community Safety, because you get all of the boroughs there, and it's a fairly simple task, I think. Just basic.
I was going to say that.
You'd have thought that, anyway. Okay, I'll take that as an action.
Maybe.
Can I?
Yeah, that's good, yeah.
Maybe you can come and do a talk with London heads about it, what the challenges are, and that might open up some doors.
A very quick comment on perpetrator provision, sorry, just because you mentioned it. We actually do have perpetrator interventions in Haringey. They're MOPAC funded. I think there's only maybe like a year left on the contract.
They've been evaluated.
Part of the process. But yeah, we've got interventions for men from ethnically minoritized backgrounds using abusive behaviours, women using abusive behaviours, LGBT perpetrator interventions, and child and adolescent to parent violence and abuse interventions as well. but yeah, non-funded by us, and they're all quite short contracts, but they're there at the moment.
Be interested to see what the evaluation is. Positive, generate some more money.
And MOPAC have gone out to tender as well for like an intervention after like a first time domestic abuse offence. So like a really brief, very primary or secondary.
Something, police get calls and then they go.
It's a conditional caution.
Oh,
So
conditional.
rather than going to court, you've got to do X amount of workshops.
And that obviously relies on an admission, presumably, and obviously a willingness to participate. in
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
If not, they get charged.
And then they've also got to be the right risk level. So they've got,
Yeah.
I think, standard risk only initially.
Yeah, I've seen something about it, but it's just
Yeah.
keen on, so is that CPS side on approved it?
I think so, yeah.
That's CPS for
Yeah.
decision. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we go round now to the last one.
Yeah, so before we move on, any more closing statements on that? So we've got your flip chart there. We'll take that away. Everyone flip chart there. I'll re-summarize that.
I was just, all I was going to say was I don't think you're alone when it comes to the housing issue. And the problems with housing. And I don't necessarily think I don't think it's anything that's done purposefully. I just think it's the systems that are currently in force and actually, and I think it's down to us to keep chasing them on.
There is provision. There's certainly
Yeah, but one of the biggest, and when you talk about gangs, and exploitation, it comes up every single week. And you're talking about, we've got gang members, they're high-end gang members. We need to get them out of the borough. They're in danger, serious danger. How serious? Well, how serious is serious? And we still can't get them out of the borough. And then we've got young exploited young people.
Say that conversation.
Okay.
The conversation we can have next about gangs.
It was just, I was just linking it with the victim support. Yeah. So effectively, we work with sort of high-end gang. No gang member is ever going to turn around and say, "I am a gang member." We know they don't like to admit it. But we work with gang members, and as a general rule, most of the clients that we work with are over the age of 18, and they're adults basically. However, there is a small cohort that we do work with that are under the age of 18, and they're worked with through social services. The referral pathways. We have a referral pathway directly into us, and then our referral pathway is then into other services. The work that we do is effectively it's one-to-one, intense. We don't take on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients. We've got 2 specialist gangs workers, myself, and what we do is we do that intensive one-to-one work with the gang member who is advocating that they want out of the lifestyle. Sometimes they may have been through your service because they've actually been shot. That's the trigger that's actually said they want out the lifestyle. But we work with people that want to work with us, and effectively we will take them, signpost them, generally take them to things like DWP. We'll take them to housing. We'll take them to the NHS. Support them through any processes of rehabilitation that need. Take them through the drugs process, and effectively hold their hand until they are out of the gang. And sometimes that means and generally speaking, it means that we have to move them off the borough, and that's where the issue with housing comes in. We've also got links with mental health services, so we do referrals into Operation Vanguard. And through Project Future, which is also on the borough. Again, sexual health is a big issue. That especially now, I've been in a couple of meetings the last week. There has been an increase, not only from the local authority perspective, but also from the police perspective, an increase in girls, basically around the missing piece. And around exploitation, and when it comes to the boys, it's generally child. When it comes to the boys, it's child criminal exploitation, And generally speaking, it's now been, the increase in girls is actually seeing an increase in child sexual exploitation. Do you guys still come to the exploitation panel?
Meg does, our VAW coordinator does, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Because I cool. Yeah.
I've not seen it. I want to go to it though, I've not been.
Yeah, I'll send you an invite.
Thank you.
So effectively, yes. So what we do is we link in with all our partners, including police partners. So we've got the exploitation team from the police, and obviously the gangs team from the police. We meet every morning and have a conversation about what's happened in the last 24 hours, what we could be looking at over the coming days. We exchange information. Whether you would call that intel or not, I don't know, but sometimes we do. So it's a two-way process, and effectively we do everything we can to move our clients out of the gang lifestyle. The problem we have sometimes is that they are a perpetrator and a victim, and some of ours have been started off under the exploitation banner. And they've then progressed on to being a gang member and a perpetrator. And then we've got some of our gang members then become enablers of younger people to exploit them, to get them back to. So it's a really complex piece of work. We do link in with Vogue. We do link in with victim support. Like I said, we've got links down at Project Future for people with PTSD, which a lot of our clients have, and they have it from a very early age, and linking into all the other services that we have available to us, basically to better help support our clients get out of the gang and get out of the serious youth violence piece. That's what we do. So.
Yeah, I was going to turn it on its head. I've been unusually quiet for me. I'm normally the gobby one at meetings, but because I'm new, I'm just trying to be a bit of a sponge and take it all in. And in a former life, I was Director of Housing and Director of Regulatory Services and Community Safety. And it's interesting that I've heard some fantastic stuff going on, but the same scenario playing out where we're all in our silos and we're doing a bit, we're going to copious amounts of meetings. We think we're talking to the right people, missing thing. And the theme of this event today is about victims. And what happens in that is the victim gets lost and no one's really doing. So as much as I'm responsible for ASB, I don't see it as that narrow field, because ASB is complex, and I've just written an ASB policy and trying to be clear about what it is we do. We're not responsible for drugs because that's a police issue, but we're part of the bigger picture. And I'm all about early intervention and prevention, because there's no point shutting the stable door when the horse has already bolted. If we can take some preventative action, then that's where it's key. So one of the things I've already said to Hubert when I arrived, and I'm only my third week in, there was this meeting, there was that meeting, there's PPSG, there was CMARIC, there was this, there was that, and I'm very focused on why we do stuff. What's the data? What's the evidence? What's the outcome? What did we do? What did we achieve? What can we do better? So one of the things I've introduced in other areas is around a tasking document, which police do very well, but it informs the work we do. So it identifies where the hotspot areas like PPSG do. It looks at the serious nominals that you need to consider. It informs your joint operations moving forward. It informs your patrols internally. But it's about, and I hear it a lot, and I've heard it a lot at Haringey, it's about getting the right people around the table. So I think what we need to do in the Arsenal CSP is actually mapping what's out there, because there's some of this stuff that needs to happen at a serious level, a senior level. But operationally, that's where it falls down a bit. So you can't get, and I'm not going to mention people, but you can't get certain services to attend because they don't see the benefit of it for their service area, or they're too busy going, oh, I'm going to these three things. What we need to do is streamline it and get the right people around the table working together collaboratively, because it's not one single agency's issue to solve, and we're never going to solve it. And we need to move away from, oh, that's a police issue or that's a council issue. We have our part to play in that performance, in a sense, because what we're focusing on, I've said this at a recent meeting with Hubert, residents out there, members of the public out there don't want to know, oh, it was their fault, it was housing's fault, it was ASB's.
Don't care.
In a council sense, it's the council's fault or it's the police's fault. But what we need to do, particularly as a CSP, is work collaboratively so that we enhance that package that's put out there for the residents and members of the public, and also know what we're all doing. Because honestly, I've heard some fantastic stuff today. I'm over passionate about the world that we work in, so forgive me for that. But yeah, I think there's real opportunity to do some really good, and I'm not going to say stuff because you're already doing it, but bringing it together and enhancing what we do in a bigger way. And I know that we're acknowledging that in the council, because there is going to be, I'm only interim, so there is going to be a head of community safety, and I think that's the right move, because that brings all of the hate crime, prevent, community safety, ASB, because it's all a bit higgledy-piggledy. So just to give a brief background, you've got housing ASB, which do low-level ASB. You've got my team ASB that do ASB, that's high level. And then you've got ASB noise, which is just confusing. So it's ASB, ASB, ASB. And trying to write a policy where initially it was, well, this is low level and this is high level and this is noise, but there might be stuff that's low level that it might actually be tenancy management, but it might not be tenancy management. It might be ASB high level. No, stop that. That's confusing. We need to be very clear about what it is, because otherwise, chaos will ensue. So yeah, so there's a lot of work to be done. It's just the time to be able to do it. But I'm really confident that this CSP and the partners around the table and the wider partners that are not here today actually can do some really good stuff. And I'm really looking forward to being part of it. I haven't really told you what my team does. I'd like to keep that a little bit secret. But if you've got any issues around ASB, I mean, I'm always approachable. Always. You may not want to come and find me and have a one-to-one conversation because you never get away from me. But yeah, always reach out to me or the team and we'll help as much as we can. We're a busy team, and I'm finding that particularly with the noise team, and I'm going to rebrand them because they're not ASB noise. They're actually regulatory enforcement, because they deal with statutory nuisance to a great extent. So yeah, so watch this space, but give me a shout if you need any help or information, or you can help me preferably.
So, 3 questions. Anyone else? So Tracy's touched on what we're doing. Jess spoke a bit. Anyone else doing anything? Obviously, police colleagues are doing a lot in the ASB arena.
ASB and obviously Jess as well. I think we've got that fine. Like Jeff said, it's really difficult sometimes to think about who's a victim and who's a suspect when it comes to get. So they're going to be wearing both hats, aren't they? At some point.
I've had some really good conversations with police around are they a victim? Are they and I think both sides get it.
I think educating sometimes on our side, maybe some of our officers when they first go to stuff, they don't always recognise that. They say criminal because we're trained into looking for crime and dealing with the crime. But sometimes you've got to look beyond that. And then luckily we've got teams like yourself and our exploitation teams and gangs teams who come in afterwards with that sort of the CCE, CSE perspective, which is really useful, because the main thing is obviously is prevention.
Absolutely.
So, getting them out of it is important. And obviously ASB, we have a lot of input in. We hold the PPSG every month where we're tasking all our resources. It's based on data, as you said, and the data we get. Sometimes I think one of the challenges we get is that we get underreporting, because some communities, obviously there's lots of communities within Haringey, some don't talk to police, some do talk to police, some have sort of language issues, or they just accept in and it's better from where they've come from or stuff. So maybe sometimes there's underreporting in certain areas. So, we might be missing that sort of trick. And I think trying to reach out to those communities and get their inputs, something we need to be better at, I think. So I think
one thing that's really come to light in my mind, so as Tracy said, all the good work they've done, I didn't know that. I've been here forever. So what are we doing about what are we doing about getting those messages out there? If we don't know what each other's doing, how's the community know? And how do we kind of have an impact on that trust and confidence? So for me, there's a big bit of that. We talk about all the time, don't we? Different forms. What are we doing about contact? Get those messages out to these communities who may not feel safe. But there's so much great work that's going on. Where how do we get those messages out? So maybe there's a piece of work there to talk about.
And maybe one to ask of the board could be to develop a community safety magazine or partnership that we could send to everybody, which highlights all of the different areas of work that we're doing as a partnership. our successes, our challenges, our asks of our communities.
Maybe it's about the discussion with the board about what the board feels can be the best way about communicate those messages out. It might be a magazine. I'm not really one for magazine personally, because most people talk to away, didn't they? So what's the best way of cascading that information? We've got how many extra, it's different, you know, we've all got a different, I think, pools where we communicate messages out. What is going to be the most effective forum? It might be leaflets, it might be on the website, it might be us being advocates, us doing a video, do you know, us doing videos, you know, there's so many different avenues.
I agree with that, and I think we're in a world now where we can't do what we've always done because it's always worked that way. We need to think differently. We need to think about what our community, how they communicate, how the young people communicate, how the older people tend to be face to face. So that's your public meetings and stuff like that. There's a whole raft of programs that you can introduce. It's Instagram, dare I say TikTok. I've done a TikTok video in a former life. No, not telling my name. No, it was a council, and that was scary for the council. I have to be honest, so about, ooh, TikTok. And actually we got more traction from that because we were enforcement, but we were seen as approachable. But yeah, I think it's just about not ruling anything out and using it all. I think I agree. Leaflets and dare I say, I actually said once at a committee that I'd rather set my hair on fire than do another leaflet, because what people do is they put it goes through the letterbox and they miss it, or they just pick it all up and put it in the bin. We need to be more engaged, and it's a two-way conversation. It's not necessarily us just telling people what we want them to hear. It's showing it and being that person and being out in the community. I'm a big fan of, and probably people go, oh no, days of action, weeks of action, being out there, you know, the fire service, the police, planting with the children on the estate and going into the schools, going into our shelter schemes. I did adopt a scheme where we got, because you've got a lot of elderly people that live in those sheltered schemes, or whatever your terminology you use here. And you get people to adopt the scheme, you get kids going in and doing projects with the older. It's just intergenerational. And it's a big ask, but it can be done.
I mean, I don't want to reinvent the wheel, but we already do weeks of action. So we kind of have a collective kind of input into that, and we already do comms around it as well. So it's something that we're already, maybe expanding it out a bit. Yeah.
Just to summarise some of the challenges. So housing came up. So again, it's the ask of the board is how can we improve housing outcomes for victims of domestic abuse, victims of violence, etc. I heard the need to kind of have a better way of kind of understanding what we do collectively as a community safety partnership, what the good things, the successes, the challenges within that. There was something around increasing trust, local trust around reporting. So I think as Councillor Roberts said, utilising what we already do, things like days of action, weeks of action, to get those messages out. And I think the really important thing about the days and weeks of action is that collaboration where we work together, not just community safety, but we've got the police with us.
Sorry, John, just thinking, is everyone involved in our days and weeks of action? Everyone around the table is.
Our walk, 16 days of action.
Sorry? No, we've got a weeks of action that we're doing, but so I know you're not. So maybe the question is, maybe people of the board, how do we expand that out? So maybe that's asked next time we've got a week of action. Invite you to what you can contribute to that. Because we're out, high visibility, tackling different issues.
You coming to our walk for women? Monday the 20th of November, 10 a.m. Spurs.
I'm there.
Yeah.
I know that. But again, maybe that's a conversation about what we can do as a board.
The other one I picked up, which I've spoken to Tracy about before, and I like the idea of this, is how do we in terms of our joint tasking, and tasking is not just about resolving issues, it's about supporting victims as well. And how do we ensure that we've got kind of a coordinated approach to tasking, which links in with the police, TTCG, with the precision crime fighting we do as a borough, and also the kind of wider PPSG tasking. I think that is a kind of a big one to think about, but it's certainly something we should, because I think that then helps us to utilise our services more effectively, so we're not wasting resources, actually saving money but providing a better service. So I'll kind of take that way.
Yeah, one of the things, Joe, on that point is around, so the now, sorry, is that a PCF, isn't it? Precision Crime Fighting monthly meeting.
Yeah.
Sorry, the thing just changed. It used to be PPSG, but now I think it's PCF. It's whether, as a council, you have like a, not necessarily a pre-meet, but a forum for, that goes before that to escalate things into. Do you see what I mean?
It's a PPSG.
Well, Joe and I said that, but maybe at the PPSG.
The
that could be
PPSG, so
further.
PCS is different to the PPSG, the PCS.
Yeah, also.
So the task is pre-TTS, pre-TTCG, PCS.
Ah, public sector.
PPSG still runs
It gets
as
better.
the main meeting for tasking within it,
PCA,
separate to that, yeah.
right. And
Piece-
so does one feed into the other then? That's part of the question.
When Hubert and I are there, it does, because I understand what's going on.
Yeah,
But if Hubert and I weren't there, it probably wouldn't. So
Yeah.
I think we just need a bit
Well,
more.
we've only had two,
yeah,
and we are there.
it is new, yeah,
Part of one of the action from the PPSG, part of the problem solving group, another acronym.
Yeah.
What do we want to feed back into the prison crime?
exactly.
So
Yeah.
So what kind of, yeah, because a bit like our, I'm gonna go again with the acronyms, PCF.
Yeah.
Feeds into the main TTCG.
It
So
also
the
goes,
bits that rise to the top on that one feed into the big one. So I suppose what I'm saying is which are the bits from the PPSG that we say actually we need more focus on that through the PCF. So, yeah.
Like partners around the table. Part of the problem solving, that's what to contribute to that.
Yeah, I suppose that's a little bit about governance and which boards report into
Yeah.
which, and everybody understanding, you know, a bit to your point about what's the point of all these different meetings, where do they go, and how
Do they
do we
do-
make sure we're focusing on the right things that have risen to the top of all of those.
I think that plays to your point about how do we know where women aren't feeling safe in the borough?
Mm,
Again, that should feed into the part of problem solving group, then feed.
Exactly, yeah,
Again, you know, I think this forum has been helpful in us kind of thinking about areas where there are gaps where we can really enhance.
From a data analytics perspective, I guess it'd be helpful to just to understand what kind of metrics there might be out there, both qualitative, quantitative. Kind of take stock of where we are now with some of these discussions we've had, and then perhaps the direction of travel over the next kind of 6 to 12 months, just to see we are moving in the right direction with some of these. So I think there's some really helpful conversations. It's worthwhile considering, if we get some kind of concrete information to say, what we're doing is being effective, or whether we need to be doing something different. So perhaps I can take that away to look at what measures there might be to do that.
yeah, that'd be good actually, because it's not just, crime performance or that kind of raw data, is there? It's how else we look at.
We had some really useful information from our board consultation exercises. So there's quite a bit of qualitative information that I think would be useful.
And we've done some surveys as part of the council which highlighted the issue that we can feed into that. Sandy, fantastic about that, so we can put that together. So part of this is putting that together, a bit of an action plan, theme it, and work out what the next steps are, and then the board can hold us as partners to account on what we're doing, moving that forward.
I think the last point I really wanted to get out there was this point around victims and suspects, or victims and perpetrators. And I think, if there's any gaps, it's how we kind of disaggregate the two, because it's not one often. And it's just making sure that we don't forget the victim focus, because often that, and a very good example of that is exploitation victims or survivors. Often they are coerced into committing criminality, but they are still victims. So we need to kind of just maybe think about that. I don't think we need to come up with the answers as a board today, but I think over time we need to start thinking about how we work with those individuals. Obviously, they need to be punished, or there needs to be a sanction, but we can't forget the victims focus, because that then just builds up that resentment.
There are processes in place, aren't there? You've got the NRM. There's a number of other processes that are in place. And I think and we had the discussion earlier about having the right people around the table, and I think it's having the right, when you're saying victim or perpetrator, it's about having the right people around the table to make that decision.
Sorry, I was just going to say language can be really useful as well, because they don't have to be perps. They can just be somebody who is using abusive behaviours. So that's how we wouldn't say we've got a young perpetrator. We'd say we've got a young person.
And I also think, and it's around language in meetings as well, where you've got social, especially from, I'm not going to mention it, but social workers basically saying that the young person's this, that, and the other, when actually they're a young person, and actually we need to deal with them as a young person. Don't calling a 13-year-old a gang member he's not a gang member. Been doing this for 8 years and 26 before that. And the fact is that I've never met a gang member that's been 12, 13 years old. I've met young people that have been vulnerable and they've been victims and actually they've been exploited to do the work of a gang, but I've never actually met a full-on gun swinging, knife wielding gang member that's been 12 and 13 years old.
And it's definitions, because no, we've all grown up locally, we've all known friends and been part of a peer group.
Yeah.
Not in a gang.
Yeah.
You know, I just like individuals that
Yeah.
did certain, never part of
Just
gangs. So
because-
for me,
Yeah.
language and interpretation and how we like to put our young people into, you know, for me, there's a bit of work.
Absolutely. And the fact, and we try to explain the fact that you live on a particular estate doesn't necessarily, that's got a gang doesn't necessarily mean that you're a gang member.
When you're trying to get young people that are trying to exit from a gang, you said, you know, it sounded like there was lots of holistic support that gets put into place. How long are they supported for? Is there like a time limit?
No.
Like there is. Nice.
We have a minimum time limit where possible, a minimum time limit of 6 months. We do not have a maximum. So we've actually had clients. In fact, we've got a client now. We worked with him pre-pandemic. We got him out to Slough. We became a personal trainer. We got him a job in a gym. He got housing. He's got a girlfriend. It's just recently fallen apart. We saw him walking up Wood Green High Road. Thank you, Karen. Mark had a conversation with him. He's now back on our books. So we don't ever say no. But what we do say is there's got to be, you don't build those relationships in 2 minutes. So you've got to have that one-on-one constantly for a minimum of 6 months before you can get that person to start to move away.
But there are two of you that are working.
There's 3 of us.
3 of us.
There's me and 2 specialist gangs workers. Yes. Yeah. Right. Right. Basic. Well, I like to keep it below 20. And that's mainly because of we're actually funded to do intensive work.
Yeah.
If you've got 30 or 40 people on your books, which happened, and it literally just waters down everything you're trying to do. And actually intensive work isn't a telephone call to a client twice a week. So we keep the numbers low, but we've also got a number of, I can talk to you outside the meeting, but we've also got a number of projects that are currently running, which are seeing really good numbers in the younger cohort of young people.
Sorry, Jeff, just to jump in, but on that, half the cohort are often in prison, so a lot of the cohort are either in prison or sort of transitioning.
Of the periphery.
Yeah, so it's manageable, but we couldn't manage it in 20.
What about a gender split? Like, do you work with people of all genders, or is it like?
And anybody.
In terms of like current caseload, is it overwhelmingly
Male.
Male? Because there's a huge overlap between Vogue and exploitation.
Yeah,
exploitation.
but the problem, but obviously our remit is gang members.
Yeah. Rather than their girlfriends.
Sorry? People that what?
On a waiting list that want to actually be supported, but
Yes, but we manage it. It's generally speaking, we're pushing at least 1 or 2 of those to get more involved, and actually sometimes it's just they're not interested, and they've got to want to work with us.
Yeah.
We're not a statutory organisation. They've got to want to work with us, and actually, you know, there comes a point where I'll have a conversation with my specialist gangs workers, and me and Joe will have a conversation, and actually we'll just have said, look, enough's enough.
I'm thinking, is there an area where we probably need to spend some time with each other? You know, would that be helpful for the board to say, okay, let's go out with our IOM or go out with Big Support, you know, just for us to raise our awareness as a board? I don't know if that's something you can perhaps think about. Someone's going to volunteer, yeah, spend some time with us. But we had our Pentonville and things like that. So, but maybe there's a conversation we can have just about raising our own awareness. Now we spoke about the gap in our Working Housing Association. Just an idea. So,
I mean, 16 days of activism, we're doing a walk for women in Tottenham. So we will be talking about our services then. Yeah. On that.
So as part of the CSP,
everyone's invited to that.
you should
So I guess in the way that we talk about co-location for our kind of like partner services, like maybe we need to co-locate. Yeah.
Are we
Yeah.
on the fourth floor? But again, let's get that out. I think us, and part of me is what branding have we got as a CSP? I don't think we have.
Yeah.
What we're leading as a CSP, maybe that's an idea. But all of us as a board should be going to that.
Yeah.
I'll make
Yeah.
sure that I'm there.
There's sexual violence awareness training as well that's free and online, domestic abuse in deaf communities training, free and online, and domestic abuse in LGBT communities training. Just loads of free training,
Maybe
16 days.
minutes, maybe Nav can circulate those. Is that
Yeah.
something we can do, Nav? Yeah. So
Get links over.
Okay, so I think we've come to the end of the discussion. Thank you, everybody. Just to wrap up the last few minutes. So we've discussed, haven't we, a massive amount of work going on. I think the theme is about continuing that sort of coordination and discussion and making sure that we're noting the good work, but also the opportunities that we've got to collaborate better. And I know quite a few people have taken notes. I'm not sure whether we want to summarise at this stage key actions or whether they'll be documented and output, some sort of output, ideally before the next meeting. So that because obviously we only meet quarterly, then we can actually agree, I would say, outside of the meeting, agree which ones we're taking forward, and then that could be perhaps an update for February's meeting. Yeah, I think certainly from my perspective, it's been useful and really good actually to see everybody literally around the table, which is really nice. Does anybody have any other business, anything they want to raise while we're here? No? Okay, so I think the key action, I think, to come away. Sorry, go on, Joe. You've got one.
Sorry,
Yes.
just occurred to me. I'm going to send out, for those that are here today, it was for the whole CSP, a feedback form just on this new format. What would be improved? What did you like? What did you like? That kind of stuff. If you could get that back to us as soon as possible within the next week, send that.
We said that to everyone, but there might be some reason why people aren't.
Yeah, so I'll make sure.
Circulate.
So we will circulate.
It's half term, so I'm on annual leave next week, but I'll do it when I get back.
That's fine. Who wants to?
And I was going to say actually, Naz, in terms of the attendance at the meeting, it's probably good for us to know who wasn't able to attend so that we can sort of find out why, whether there's a challenge in the co-location element or if it's just that they couldn't attend today. Because I think we were expecting, I don't know how many you were expecting today. Did you know?
30+.
Yeah, so a big drop off. Not sure if that was either to do with the theme. Well, so we only had a couple of apologies, literally.
Yeah.
So I think it's just worth us understanding as part of the feedback. Is it just that you can't come here in person? And I appreciate it's a bit of a sea change, isn't it, away from the sort of pre-COVID and the COVID protocol. But I probably think that would be good, and as we could do that work in the background, exactly, why they were unable.
Maybe it's up with co-chairs, we can maybe write those.
Yeah, happy to do that, happy to draft something out. And then I think the key action, I guess, from this is to produce that short list of activity that we've all agreed today and discussed today, so that we can take that away and discuss that and approve the next step. So if there's no other business, thank you again. I think there is one, sorry.
Actually, could be.
Oh, okay.
See.
Oh, I see. Okay, sorry. So this is from Russell Simmons, Deputy Head of Service, for those who don't know, from probation. I'm just reading it for the first time. Due to a probation manager's meeting this afternoon, Shirley or I will be unable to attend the CSP today. Please accept our apologies. All managers are expected to attend, so we were unable to send a deputy on this occasion. I do wish to provide the partnership with a very quick update regarding the second wave of prison releases earlier this week. You might have seen this on the news. We had 8 releases to Haringey, all of which were reported successfully to the probation office. All appropriate cases were offered substance misuse support at the office, and there were no accommodation issues. I would like to extend my gratitude to all partner agencies in supporting with these releases. The SCS 40 releases has now become an institution until further notice. So helpful update from us around that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Naz. Appreciate that. I think that was it, apart from to say we've got on the minutes, it says that the next meeting will be around the 26th of Feb. I presume you haven't confirmed that date yet, but we can be in Feb, but we'll obviously circulate the outcome today or before that so that we can start working those areas. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the sunshine. Sorry.
Shining on. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Stand up. Yeah.